everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I've posted, but as usual, life has just gotten in the way for me. As we are now moving into the warmer months of the year and field season is starting across the world, I thought I would share with you a couple tips that I have for people for getting through working in some very hot temperatures and conditions in the summer so that you don't end up getting the dehydrated, sunstroke, heat stroke, and have to take time off of work. So just to give you a bit of a background, if you don't already know, I've worked pretty much throughout several different climates in the world doing archaeology during the summer. I've did all my field seasons in Jordan were during June, July, August, and it's a very dry heat there where you can get between 35 to 40 plus degrees Celsius a day. As well, when I worked as a Canadian archaeologist, part of that was during the summer. And in Canada, the bit that I was in, it's a very humid heat. And it does get between 35 to 40 degrees a day, but including the heat from the humidity, you can get up to like 44. And then I've also, obviously, because most of my experience is now in the UK, I've worked during the summer several times in the UK. And while it might not get as hot as the desert or southern Ontario, it still poses its own challenges. And people who aren't used to working in those hotter climates do sometimes struggle with working in the heat here when it gets to around like 30-35 degrees. Obviously, heat and handling the sun is the big theme that's going to be going across the video today. And most of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about is just ways to kind of like help you deal with the heat and or avoid heat and sun related ailments that are going to force you to take time off work to recover. To start off, we're going to start with looking at what you're wearing. Contrary to popular belief, personally, I think it's better if you're more covered up when you're working rather than not. And this also will be something that is going to depend on where you're working. So when I was in the Middle East, because it's a very conservative country in comparison to where I'm from, we had rules where we always had to have our shoulders and our knees covered on site. So that basically meant wearing at least a t-shirt and long pants. Whereas I know other excavations allow you to sometimes wear like shorts and like a tank top, and that's fine. But the thing with covering more of your skin where possible is that it also helps to protect you against sunburn. And as long as you're wearing the proper clothing, it shouldn't really contribute to whether or not you actually end up overheating. Ideally, you want to be wearing fabrics that are breathable, like cotton, that are loose-ish. That doesn't always have to be the case, but you want to have like at least loose trousers as well for like flexibility and being able to like squat, bend over, do whatever you need. If you can, you want to have light colored clothing because darker colored clothing tends to hold on to heat. If you are so inclined, you can wear like the type of stuff that does like sweat wicking and everything. So this is my like main big shirt. It's an icebreaker. So it is made out of merino wool, and I got it as a gift my very first year of digging. I wore it every single year. It is the 200 lightweight grade, I guess is what you would call it. It's a really great shirt because it kind of wicks away your sweat, and even though it's tight to my skin, it has like all these mesh bits and stuff along the sides, so it's really, really breathable, and it's a very like light, loose fabric. It's not going to hold the heat in. It washes really well and really easily, and these are expensive, but it was well worth the money for me. However, I only had one, so the rest of the time I tended to wear like loose t-shirts like what I'm wearing here. As I've said before, I don't tend to spend tons and tons of money on all of my kit. I might have an expensive piece of clothing like here and there. Usually that's a gift from my parents. But because archaeologists are so hard on their clothing, you're just investing lots of money into really expensive stuff that is just probably going to end up being ruined is a bit of a waste. Like I said, if you at least have your shoulders covered, arms covered is fine. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you know, you can get away with a t-shirt and a tank top. Tank tops as well, even if I had the choice, would never wear one on site, mostly because of cleavage. Because you get enough dirt in interesting places when you're working as an archaeologist, and if you have a low-cut top, there's just more opportunity for it to get in some very uncomfortable places. Let's just leave it at that. Next up, we have protection for your head. So this is my dig hat. Let's see if I can fit it on over my buns. Not very well, but this is my dig hat. It's Hockey Canada. I wore this, again, like all the time when I was working. And you can even see like some of the dirt that's still on the rim because I haven't washed it in ages. But this is really good, again, for helping to keep your head cool. And as well, personally, I have eyes that are really sensitive to light. And I just always found that sunglasses weren't enough to make it so that I wouldn't be spending my entire day squinting. And so having the hat and having that extra shade over my face was very useful for me as well. Obviously, when you're working on a construction site, you will have different rules. I have worn this underneath a hard hat before, but there are some places that won't allow you to do that. But you can always look into buying a like hard hat accessory that will do this job, but without just being like a separate thing. It's something that'll attach into the hard hat. They have weird rules about that stuff. Another thing that you can use for covering up and helping for your head is this, which is my keffiyeh, which is an Arabic word. So this is a very simple, like 1 meter by 1 meter piece of fabric that I bought when the first time I was in the Middle East for like less than 5 pounds, probably like 2 pounds. I can't really remember. You use this to kind of tie it in creative ways around your head. So again, serves as something to protect your head and your scalp, especially from sunburn. But it can also be used in like a myriad of different ways. Like if I've been really hot before, I pour my water onto it and I use it to like dab myself to help like cool myself down. You can tie this and use it in a bunch of different ways. And I will attempt to demonstrate now the way that I learned how to wear it. This is like kind of the starter tie for this, and from this you can go a bunch of different ways. You can either twist this again and then again tie it around the back of your head and tuck it in, and it just provides some I love these buns. It just provides some coverage. But the important thing about this one is the fact that the back of your neck is being covered, because this is like one of the most vulnerable spots for sunburn that you really want to look out for. Another way that you can use this is if you have like lots of dust particles or sand in the air and it's really windy out, you can use it to cover your face. This is the way that I used to do it, which is not the official way, but it worked for me. So yeah, that's just really basic. It just covers your nose and your mouth, but still is light enough that it allows you to breathe. I mean, obviously you don't have to buy one of these from somewhere in the Middle East. You can do this with any like 1 by 1 meter square piece of fabric, but it is just a really useful way to help protect your head and face if maybe you don't feel like wearing a hat. And I have even worn my hat with this tied around it, as you can see. You can also use it as a scarf as well if you want to. This might not be ideal if you're working in the middle of the desert and it's really hot out, but again, because it's such a light piece of fabric, it doesn't tend to heat you up that much if you wear it like this. I know I have worn it like this when I was working in the Middle East. Okay, so now that we've covered kind of the clothing kind of stuff, now we want to talk a little bit about sunscreen. Obviously, if you're working outdoors during the summer, sunscreen is important. You don't want to get skin cancer, and that is more likely to happen the more you let yourself burn and the more time that you spend outside in the sun. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be concerned, especially if you're on like a field school or something, you want to get a tan over the summer. While I can appreciate that, while you're actually working on site is not the time that you're going to be getting a tan. Especially if, like me, you were working in the Middle East and you're wearing at least a t-shirt and the rest of you is covered up. It is going to give you the best farmer's tan you've ever seen, but everywhere else is going to be really uneven. So I would save the tanning for your leisure time personally. That being said, if you're spending your entire summer, every single day, outside, outdoors with a lot of sun, it doesn't matter how much sunscreen you put on, you will eventually end up getting a tan. I am religious about my skincare when it comes to sunscreen. I wear it every single day, even when it's overcast, but I don't think I've ever gotten sunburnt on field school bar one time, which was because I ended up working through the middle of the day in Jordan, which we didn't really do, but we needed to get something done. It was so hot that I rolled my sleeves of my blue shirt up a bit, and they were the only parts of me that didn't have sunscreen because I didn't remember to put any on. I just had this bright red like bar that went along my forearm. But yeah, other than that, I've been pretty good about not getting too badly burnt, and I have managed to get tanned every single summer that I went to the Middle East. So I usually use 2 different sunscreens. I have a face sunscreen and a body sunscreen, and this is just because with my face I'm really really don't want to get sunburned there, so I tend to have a higher SPF for this, whereas this will still be a high SPF but not maybe as high. And this particular sunscreen is made for your face, so it's like not really greasy or anything when it applies, and I haven't had a breakout from this as well, so that's why I like using it. When you're putting on sunscreen, while it is key to always make sure you do your nose, your cheeks, everything, especially when you're working outdoors, you want to make sure that you're always doing like the backs of your ears, the back of your neck, and your lower back. Because even when you are sitting down normally and your shirt covers your lower back, when you're crouching down in the ground, unless you have like the longest shirt and most high-waisted trousers on of your life, chances are that some of your lower back is going to be exposed. And if you're doing that for all day, you're going to get sunburned and it's going to be painful. So those are like the 3 top places that you want to make sure that you are putting your sunscreen on besides your like regular spots. Next up, we have hydration. Obviously, this is really important. If you're going somewhere that's going to be very hot for field school, digging, whatever, they will probably tell you at your like induction, whatever, to make sure that you're staying hydrated. This is really, really, really key. Don't go unprepared. It's not fun. So different places will tell you how much water you need to be drinking, and obviously that's something that you can find on Google. But I always have at least 1 water bottle. Most of the time I actually will have 2, and I'll have 1 of regular water and then 1 of some kind of flavored water. So I have these, which are Crystal Light, the pink lemonade like powder, and it's just to provide a little bit of variety. Also, obviously, when people are working, they like to have cold water, but most sites won't have a fridge for you to leave your water in. My solution for that is, where available, because obviously you don't always have a fridge available at your accommodation or whatever, I freeze my water overnight the night before, and then during the day I leave it wherever I can in the shade. Especially when it's hot, the temperature difference between the sun and the shade means that the ice is going to unfreeze much more slowly. And that is really key. In addition to rehydrating yourself, you also need to make sure that you're resalinizing yourself, I guess. So one of the big things that we got told before we went to Jordan for the first time was that when you sweat, you not only lose water, but you lose salt. And people always remember to replace the water, but they don't always remember to replace the salt. So that is a really key thing to keep in mind when you're going to be working outside every day. There's several ways that you can put salt back into your body. There are things like drinking something like Gatorade with electrolytes, or like a sports drink would work. Having salt tablets, which are an option, but I don't know why anybody would use, because I've heard that they're pretty gross. Or you can do what I do, which is have a salty snack. So I always have at least 1 of these in my lunch bag. Not this specific thing, but like some kind of crisp chip salty thing. I always have at least 1 packet in my bag. Most of the time I'll have 2, 1 for first break, 1 for lunch break. And I eat those throughout the day to replace my salt. When I was in Jordan, I had like a can of Pringles that I always carried around with me on site. I would say that that went a large way to me never having to take a day off or like sit down or take a break from sunstroke, heat stroke, whatever you want to call it, overheating. And I would actually, it got to the point where I would get calls from people in the walkie-talkie across site asking if I could come over with my Pringles, because they had someone who was like having a moment and they needed to have something to eat that was salty. So I would highly recommend that. It's cheap enough to get, and you know, if you like crisps, then there you go. The last thing on my list is not in terms of the sun protection, but is in terms of environmental protection. It's concerning bugs. I hate bugs, which is ironic for someone who has chosen a career that is largely based outdoors. But they are obviously something that you have to consider in the summer months. So somewhere like Canada, you have to be thinking about mosquitoes. Here in Scotland, you need to be thinking about midges. And as well, anywhere in the world pretty much now these days need to think about ticks, because obviously nobody wants to get Lyme disease. You can do a couple things. You can have like really high, deep content bug spray, but I know some people don't really like using that. For midges, there are specific sprays for midges that you can get from like outdoor stores, which there was an Aveeno one that I think is supposed to be pretty good for some reason. Another thing is, especially for ticks, because they don't, I think, respond to bug spray, is definitely always wearing longer trousers, pants, whatever you want to call them, when you're working outdoors and you're walking through heavily forested areas. And as well, if you can at that point, tucking the bottoms of your trousers into your socks, because they obviously look for openings in your clothing. As well, having a longer pant helps with like vegetation that's like prickly, like thistles or something like that. Obviously it's not going to shred your legs. And like I said, if you're wearing a loose enough breathable fabric, it isn't going to go a long way to making you that much hotter. So yeah, those are my top tips for if you're going to be working outdoors doing archaeology, or really anything else this summer. If you think there's anything I've missed, please comment down below. If you have any questions for me, please comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you think what I've told you is useful, and please subscribe. As per usual, I have my social media down in the description box for you guys to follow me if you so wish to, although I'm gonna warn you now, I'm not as active on it in terms of archaeology stuff as I probably could be. I'm gonna try and aim to get another video up for you guys fairly soon, because I feel really bad that I haven't been uploading as regularly as I would like to. So if you have anything that you particularly like to see, please again let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much guys for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!